Jerry. Yeah. And thank you again on behalf of the Center for Indic Studies for coming to this seminar. This year, 2019, happens to be the 150th birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi. So there are many, many programs that are being conducted all over the world. And we thought, why not, we should also do some dedicated seminars based on this Gandhi theme. Just to give you a little background, our center, the Center for Indic Studies, it was established in October of 2001. And when we were preparing for our inaugural, then as you know in September, 9/11 happened. And at that time, there was a proposal, many suggested that we should postpone our inaugural because of that event. But we said that because Gandhi is so central to the ideals of the center, and so we didn't postpone it. So we were founded in October of 2001. But today we will look at a particular aspect of Gandhi, and that is his debates with Rabindranath Tagore, the gentleman to your left. So Gandhi was born in 1869, died in 1948, assassinated in 1948. Rabindranath Tagore was born in 1861, so 8 years senior to Gandhi, and he died in 1941. And these were two towering personalities of India over, let's say, the 100 years from, let's say, 1850s to 1950s. They had amazing productivity. Gandhi's works, which is now compiled and it is known as collected works of Mahatma Gandhi, they run into 100 volumes, 100. Tagore, the collection is called in Bengali Rabindra Rachanabali. It has now about 31 volumes, but it's not really a true measure because it does not include his letters, for example, things like that. So if you include all that, that will also be very, very prodigious output. And they both, starting from their first meeting in 1915, they both agreed on, at that time, of course, India was under British rule, and so freedom movement of India was paramount for both of them. But they both agreed that this would be just a milestone. That means the political freedom would not be the end, and that should only be a milestone. And they discussed a lot as to what the future India would look like, the independent India. Then both in different capacities, they were instrumental and pioneers in bringing in women and minorities to the politics, education, other aspects of society. So in the case of Tagore, he had an institute called Shanti-Niketan, which was perhaps the first place where women could come in for higher education. Gandhiji, his ashram, that was also very, in ashram, in fact, even before he came back to India in South Africa, he started this pioneering. Yes, Raj? So he started this pioneering approach of giving women leadership positions, not just mere equality. And we can extend that to what I have written here as minorities. In the case of Gandhi, it was mainly depressed classes, as they used to be called at that time. Gandhi changed the name to Harijans. These were the, you can say, outcasts of Hindu society whose position was very bad, and it was a blot to the society in general. So Gandhi did a lot of work in trying to uplift their status. And Tagore also, and we will discuss a little bit of it a little later, And then, so this we were talking of women and minorities, but even within Hindu society, the need for reforms, how these reforms should proceed, what should be the framework of these reforms. They both had a lot of ideas about it. Today we talk of environmental sustainability, environmentalism, but you may be astonished to know that 100 years ago, both Gandhi and Tagore, in their own way, they were pioneers of this environmentalism movement. In Shantiniketan, Tagore, he brought in these new agricultural technologies for enhanced agricultural productivity in the ashram. Gandhi, of course, we know how, I mean, his famous quote was that, well, if India wants to ape the West at that time, meaning Europe and USA, then there will be no resources available on earth because it's just not possible. So those kinds of ideas, they both had a lot to say about it. And they both were very critical of what they called it the industrial West. So most of the time they used it under quotes, industrial West. This machine-based civilization, they both had tremendous objection to it. And Tagore, in many of his compositions, plays, dramas, he spent no effort in scathing criticism. This mechanizing, I mean this subservience of mind to this mechanized civilization, they had tremendous objection to it. At that time, of course, as I said, we were under the British, India was under the British control, and so the educational framework was all British built, and they both, Gandhi and Tagore, they had ideas about a new educational paradigm, which they both instituted in their ashrams to some extent or the other. Tagore in Shantiniketan, Gandhi in Phoenix Farm, Tolstoy Farm, and then when he came back and established the Sabarmati ashram. In early 20th century, the Indian elite, they all conversed in English only. Indian elite had become completely anglicized or Anglophilic. And so much so that the vernaculars, India, as you know, has many, many languages, 17 or 18 official languages, and about 30 or 40 more, depending on how you count. So those vernacular languages were losing their prominence, were losing literature, etc. So both Gandhi and Tagore stressed the need to learn in the vernacular rather than in English. And India was, and is still today, very much a rural society, but the condition of villages in India was extremely bad. So, excuse me, so they both had ideas as to how to develop village-based societies. Again, they were not using the same model, but they had ideas about it. So all I'm trying to say is they had many similarities. But I think the main, if you want to encapsulate that, that will be that India needed to free its mind, and India needed to kind of use the mind as the beacon as to what would be the next steps. So there were all these similarities, but then why are we calling it the debates? That means debate means that they had some differences. And they had many, many differences. I gave you a list of some similarities. The differences were even more, and that's the amazing part. But both were extremely transparent about these differences, and when we say debate, we typically conjure up a physical space where both are present and they are arguing back and forth. In that sense, it was not really a debate because they were not physically present in one place. They were both expressing their ideas through articles, essays, interviews, newspaper articles, so forth and so on. So they had very clear differences, and they never shied away from it. Each was absolutely clear that here is I disagree, and this is why I disagree. And the most beautiful part is that even with these differences and debates, which I shall try to highlight some, their friendship, their mutual love, mutual respect, that did not dampen the least. Okay? So the idea being that when we talk of debate, we think that this argumentation is very antagonistic, is very hostile, but it need not be like that. Now, when we talk of the debates, debate is, of course, the English word that we use. In Sanskrit, in the Indic tradition, there are actually at least 3 words that we use for debate. So the first one is vad, and vad basically means that you establish your own arguments, and the opponent then listens to your arguments and then summarizes them or understands them and presents them and says, well, is this what you are saying? And only after you agree would he or she come up with the rebuttal. Okay? So it's a very healthy argument, and the goal in vad is not really to defeat them. When we talk of debate, we usually think of defeating somebody's argument. But in vad, in the Sanskrit term, it's not really the defeating per se, it is trying to establish your position, and you contrast it. Okay? Then we come to the next level, which is called jalpa. Jalpa is the central part of vad is still there, but now we have brought in some of these gimmicks. You know, this you twist the wording of your opponent. You find a weak point and you then just drill through it. So, but you're still your goal is to establish your position. And then comes the worst part, which is called vitanda. This is not really debate, this is haranguing. You just harangue, you just try to oppose without putting any clear logic or any clear sequence. So, as much as I would like to say that Gandhi-Tagore debates were in the first category, vad, I will give you some glimpses where you can argue that it did not confine itself to the vad, it did get into the domain of jalpa. Okay. But definitely not Vedanta. So then the question is, well, why should we be worried about 100 years later or I mean, in that time frame? And when I was a school kid, at that time in Hindi, there was a very popular song. It went something like this. I will speak in Hindi first and then I will translate. It said, Sikandar ne Porus se ki thi ladai, jo ki thi ladai to main kya karu? Which basically means that in history we learned that Alexander and Porus, they had a fight. But even if they had a fight, how does it matter to me? And so I need to answer that question for you all, that why does it matter? And the answer is it matters because this series of debates, they basically helped us meaning India, get into the heart of what is this concept of India. India, as you know, has been a very ancient civilization. It has had many influences, but what would this framework be? And especially now when we are talking of debate in the 1920s, 1930s. So at that time, what was the role of, let's say, modernity, enlightenment, reason? So all that had to be incorporated into this concept of India, and these debates helped us do that. Then these debates also set a roadmap as to how India will deal with the West. Because as you can imagine, after more than 50, 60 years of British rule, before that there was Mughal rule. So India felt that, I mean, some parts of India, they felt that we have had enough of this outside influence. We need to kind of hermetically seal ourselves. And Tagore definitely did not agree to that. So I will try to give you some flavor of that. Then, as I said before, it was in the context of India's freedom movement, but this debate also helped us to clarify what would be the guiding principles of post-independent India. And when India became independent, it established what is known as the Constitutional Commission. And when India was coming up with its constitution, which was formally promulgated in 1950, many of these ideas that were in these debates did come up in that constitution, in that discussion as well. And whenever we have this kind of a debate between these two towering personalities, towering giants, then the question is, what is your ultimate goal? And the idea, of course, is for reaching that ultimate goal, you may have to sacrifice some of the lower goals. I mean, of course, whether you can call it a goal or not is a different question, but you need to establish that. So these debates helped establish that. And finally, as I will try to show you with some of these debates, the goal was the same, as I said, and they themselves agreed. Tagore and Gandhi themselves agreed the goal was the same. But they differed in the means, and they articulated as clearly as possible that the means are as important as the end. So just the end being the same and we are different paths, so it doesn't matter, that definitely was not something they could agree to. Okay. So now let's get to the debates. So as I said, they met, I mean, Gandhi, as you know, he went to England for his law education, came back, was a failed lawyer in Bombay. I mean, didn't get too much of traction. And you can say as a desperate measure, he went to South Africa. So he comes back from South Africa in 1914, I mean, for good. And their first meeting is in 1915. By this time, Tagore has already won his Nobel Prize in 1913, so it's universally known, what to talk of India. So their first meeting, of course, Gandhi knew, before the first meeting, Gandhi knew of Tagore's Shantiniketan, and in fact, before Gandhi came to India, he sent his boys of Phoenix Ashram to Shantiniketan. They spent a few days there. And Tagore also knew of Gandhi. Gandhi was not that well known in 1915, but it so happened, incidentally, that Gandhi had come to India in 1901 in the Indian National Congress, which was held in Calcutta at that year. And at that time, he was, of course, coming as a petitioner on behalf of the Indians of South Africa. But he had a meeting with Rabindranath Tagore's elder brother, Jyotirindra Tagore. Jyoti Dada, Tagore used to call him. So Jyoti Dada and Gandhi, they met, and Jyoti Dada was very impressed with Gandhi. And of course, this news was communicated to the family. So when Tagore met Gandhi, he knew that at least Jyoti Dada had given him glowing recommendation. So they meet in 1915, and after their first meeting, each comes out with tremendous respect and tremendously impressed with the other. So I will show you two pictures of two people, neither of them the subject of our debates. Pranjivan Mehta, a very well-known personality in Gandhi's biography. Gandhi was heavily influenced by Dr. Mehta. And why do I show this picture? I show this picture because Pranjivan Mehta was the one who actually coined this honorific Mahatma for Gandhi. And this was way before 1915. This was in 1907. Okay? So the first documented place of addressing Gandhi as Mahatma was by Pranjivan Mehta in 1907. And similarly, Brahmo Madhav Upadhyay, Brahmo Bandhav Upadhyay, he's well known in, he was well known as an intellectual in the Bengali elite when we talk of Bengali Renaissance. He's a very important figure. And he was also a very good friend of Tagore. And in fact, in 1901, he went with Tagore to what is known as Shantiniketan now. At that time, Shantiniketan had not been founded. And in 1901, he used the term Gurudev. And so today, universally, when we say Gandhi, we say Mahatma Gandhi. When we say Tagore, we say Gurudev Tagore. But these two people, much before the Gandhi-Tagore first meeting, they used this. But what Gandhi and Tagore did was they took these and they used it so frequently that everybody else started using it. So Gandhi and Tagore, they popularized it. Gandhi Gurudev and Tagore Mahatma. And in all his letters, Tagore would say, "My dear Mahatma Ji." In all of Gandhi's letters, you will see, "My dear Gurudev." So this is a picture just I found. This is at a Gujarati literary conference in the 1920s. And I like this picture because it's one of the very few photographs where Gandhi is seen wearing this cap. This cap in India is called Gandhi cap. But you don't find many pictures of Gandhi with this cap. Anyway, so let's get to the heart of the debates. The first major disagreement occurred in 1921, and this was because Gandhi, in some public meeting, somebody asked Gandhi, and the question was asked of Ram Mohan Roy. Ram Mohan Roy, very famous intellectual of the early 19th century. And the question was asked of Ram Mohan Roy, and Gandhi said, as you can read, Ram Mohan, and he also brought in Lokmanya Tilak, but we'll not talk of Tilak. Ram Mohan Roy were so pygmies, the word pygmies, who had no hold upon the people. And Ram Mohan would have been a greater reformer, and Lokmanya Tilak would have been a greater scholar if they had not to start with the handicap of having to think in English and transmit their thoughts chiefly in English. Now, Gandhi, first of all, it is very uncharitable remark, unnecessary remark, because there was no need, and it was also inaccurate. Why? Because when we read the biography of Ram Mohan Roy grew up in a Bengali family, so of course he knew Bengali. In those days, Sanskrit was the means of learning about the Hindu scriptures and religions, so Ram Mohan Roy knew Sanskrit. He then learned Arabic and Persian, because at that time Persian was still what we call as the court language. Many people in the early 19th century, late 18th century, in all parts of India, they learned Persian. So he knew Bengali, Sanskrit, Arabic, Persian. He learned French, but only later in his life did he learn English. Much, much later in his life. So when Gandhi says that, well, Ram Mohan Roy thought in English and transmitted it in English, that is definitely not correct. And Tagore was extremely critical of this. Ram Mohan Roy also happens to be, in a way, you can say, the founder of what is known as the Brahmo movement. It was a movement to reform Hindu society. And the Tagores, Rabindranath Tagore's father, he was also very prominent in that Brahmo Samaj. So Tagore had tremendous respect for Ram Mohan Roy. And so Tagore then comes back and hits very hard. I strongly protest against Mahatma Gandhi's trying to cry down such great personalities as Ram Mohan Roy. In his blind zeal for declaiming against our modern education, it shows that he is growing enamored of his own doctrines. In the modern age, Ram Mohan Roy had that comprehensiveness of mind to be able to realize the fundamental unity of spirit in not only Hindu and Mohammedan, but also Christian cultures. And then Tagore goes on to say, Ram Mohan Roy could be perfectly natural in his acceptance of the West only because his education had been perfectly Eastern. He had the full inheritance of the Indian wisdom. So, very strong remark. Now, what does Gandhi do? Gandhi, he doesn't really answer the rebuttal. He uses something which since then has become so popular. And he says, I hope I am as great a believer in free air as the great poet. And this is something that has been used in many arguments. I want the cultures of all the lands to be blown about my house, but I refuse to be blown off my feet by any. So, it's not a direct rebuttal, but as I said, this quote of Gandhi became so famous. And almost anybody now, when we talk of multiculturalism, when we talk of liberalism, this again comes up. People say, oh yeah, I am open, but I refuse to be blown off. Okay, so very interesting. So this is a photograph taken in Shantiniketan. So this is of course Tagore, Gandhi, and then this third gentleman is C.F. Andrews, a remarkable personality, a British who came to India, stayed throughout his life, and we don't have the time to get into his biography, but amazing personality. He was the one who actually worked both with Gandhi and Tagore, so he knew them both very well. So now we come to perhaps the most intense and direct and scathing part of the debates. And so this was not about one particular topic, it encompassed many aspects. So you can call it the Charkha Swaraj non-cooperation boycott debates. Okay? So Charkha is a spinning wheel. Gandhi introduced this idea of each person in his or her home spinning. This is a small home scale spinning wheel. You spin and you get fabric out of cotton, and that he was articulating that this would be a very good national movement if everybody did it. Swaraj, again, English translation is a little tricky. Almost everybody says home rule, so let's just stick to that, home rule. Non-cooperation. So Gandhi, of course, came up with this satyagraha, this adherence to truth, and he said that, well, we have to show our displeasure or our refusal to obey British laws by this non-cooperation movement, which would be non-violent. And that would also include, because education, as I said, was completely governed by the British, the students should boycott schools. So that was the framework, okay? And so now, what I'll do is, incidentally, they met, the two of them, Gandhi and Tagore. They met in Tagore's house in Calcutta in 1921. And let's see how this debate started. So Gandhi started saying, Gurudev, you were yourself a leader and promoter of the Swadeshi movement. So when we look at biography of Tagore, Tagore did have involvement in a political movement called the Bongo Bongo in 1905. Bengal, a province of India, was proposed to be divided along sectarian lines. There would be a Hindu Bengal, a Muslim Bengal, and Tagore fought it vehemently. So that is what was known as the Swadeshi movement. So that's what Gandhi is implying. But then Tagore became disillusioned with political movements, and he kind of retreated to his poetry and drama and all that. So this is what Gandhi is saying. You were yourself a leader and promoter of the Swadeshi movement some 20 years ago. You always wanted Indians to stand on their own feet as Indians and not to be poor copies of Westerners. My Swaraj movement today is the natural offspring of your Swadeshi. Join me now and fight with me for Swaraj. So Gandhi is extremely clear what he wants from Tagore, what he expects from Tagore. And what does Tagore say? Tagore says, Gandhi ji, the whole world is suffering today from the cult of a selfish and short-sighted nationalism. India has all down her history offered hospitality to the invader of whatever nation, creed or color. I have come to believe that as Indians, we not only have much to learn from the West, but that we also have something to contribute. We dare not shut the West out. The West's ideas and achievements would help Indians to learn how to collaborate amongst themselves. So Gandhiji then says, Gurudev, I have already achieved Hindu-Muslim unity. Tagore dissented. He says, when the British either walk out or are driven out, keep in mind, this is 1921. India became independent in 1947, so this is 26 years before that. When the British either walk out or are driven out, what, Gandhiji, will happen then? Will Hindu and Muslim then lie down together peacefully? You know they will not. So Tagore is extremely clear. Then Gandhi comes back. He says, but Gurudev, my whole program for the winning of Swaraj is based on the principle of non-violence. That is why, as a poet who believes in peace, you can feel free to ally yourself with this peaceful movement and work for it. Okay? And so then Tagore says, Gandhiji, come and look over the edge of my veranda and look down there and see what your so-called non-violent followers are up to. So what was happening then, and which was very common at that time, is, as I said, this boycott of schools, and it was also a boycott of foreign clothing, foreign textiles. So in those days, what happened was they would collect, people would collect at a central location, they would bring their foreign cloth, and that foreign cloth would be burned, okay? And so that would be, you can say, a way of expressing their protest. So that is what Tagore is referring to. He says, look over the edge of my veranda. The non-cooperators had stolen pieces of foreign-made cloth from the bazaar in Chitpur Road and lit a bonfire with them in the courtyard. You can see for yourself, there they are, howling around it like a lot of demented dervishes. Is that non-violence, Gandhiji? We Indians are, as you know so well, a very emotional people. Do you think you can hold our our violent emotions under firm control with your non-violent principles? No, you cannot. Only when the children of our different religions, communities and castes have been schooled together can you hope to overcome the violent feelings which exist today. And I am reminded, my grandfather, who was in his 20s at that time, he told me that he also participated in some of these events. And he told me that when they would do it, when they would light this bonfire and then they would sing and dance, and it gave a boost of adrenaline, no question about it. But after that, 2 days after that, 3 days after that, it's back to square one. So what Tagore is hinting is this cultish kind of fascination is what he was very much against. Okay, whenever you try to deify something or place something based on pure raw emotion, he was completely against that. So that's the background. Then Gandhi said, well, okay, let me just skip because we may be running out of time. So that this debate went on, I will just skip some. So Tagore then went on to accuse Gandhi of manipulating the people with symbols instead of substance. And he says, but Indians by nature have always been worshippers of symbols, of images. So then Gandhi came back, countered back. He says, when talking of economic wrongs, Gandhi said it was legitimate to refer to foreign-made cloth as impure. Only a word such as this would induce people to sacrifice the cloth and burn it. For Tagore, such hypnotism was a matter of shame. And so they realized that this discussion, or supposed discussion, was getting nowhere. So Gandhi kind of gave up. I see my request for you is your help is almost hopeless. And then he said, well, you can ask your friends to spin. As I said, Gandhi's main idea was everybody should spin. this charkha at home. And this is where Tagore's humor and his brilliance comes. How does Tagore respond? Tagore says, Gandhi ji, poems I can spin, songs and plays I can spin, but of your precious cotton, what a mess I would make. So then this was the meeting, which, as you can see, didn't go very well. And then they took to writing. Gandhi in his Young India, his publication, Tagore in Modern Review, and in some others. So it went back and forth. And it's a very long, detailed arguments. Of course, we don't have the time to go through it in completeness. I will just give you the flavor. But when one reads these articles, then two things come out. One is, of course, the power of their argument. And the second thing is how deep they thought about it. It was not just that they were writing it based on their emotions. They backed it up with facts, and not only facts, with their understanding of history, and not only that, even back to the Hindu texts. So they quoted from Hindu texts, the Upanishads, the Bhagavad Gita. So it's a remarkable exchange. Anyway, so let's see what Tagore has to say of this Swaraj. So Tagore, alien government in India is a veritable chameleon. Today, it comes in the guise of the Englishman. Tomorrow, perhaps, as some other foreigner. The next day, without awaiting a jot of its virulence, it may take the shape of our own countrymen. So just see how prescient he was. It may take the shape of our own countrymen. However determinedly we may try to hunt this monster of foreign dependence with outside lethal weapons, it will always elude our pursuit by changing its skin or its color. But if we gain within us the truth called our country, all outward Maya will vanish of itself. And then he goes on to say that, I mean, it's a country not just because we were born in it. And he ends that paragraph with saying, but the true nature of man is his inner nature with its inherent powers. Therefore, that only can be a man's true country, which he can help to create by his wisdom and will, his love and his actions. So, Tagore's idea of country is very different from what we typically consider geographical space or things like that. And then, as I said, this is a long argument, so I'll just give you a little more flavor. So Tagore then attacks not just Gandhi, he's also implying, I mean, Gandhi, of course, was very popular by then. He had many, many followers. So now Tagore is attacking his followers in a way, but obliquely, not very directly. What does he say? He says, stratagem in politics is a barren policy. This was a lesson of which we were sorely in need. All honor to the Mahatma. So he is glorifying Mahatma Gandhi. All honor to the Mahatma who made visible to us the power of truth. But reliance on tactics is so ingrained in the cowardly and the weak that in order to eradicate it, the very skin must be sloughed off. Even today, our worldly wise men cannot get rid of the idea of utilizing the Mahatma at a secret and more ingenious move in their political campaign. So now he is imputing that these followers of Mahatma, they definitely are not at the spiritually elevated state of Mahatma. So they are using all this for their, you can say, own ends. So with their minds corroded by untruth, they cannot understand what an important thing it is that the Mahatma's supreme love should have drawn forth the country's love. The thing that has happened is nothing less than the birth of freedom. It is the gain by the country of itself. And then he attacks Mahatma. And he says, well, Gandhi had so many options. I mean, why did he choose this particular path? And so he says, he first explains why he's calling now Gandhi as the Guru. And then he says, why should not our Guru of today, who would lead us on the paths of karma, send forth such a call? Why should he not say, come ye from all sides and be welcome, let all the forces of the land be brought into action? This is a very famous Upanishadic expression, but for then alone shall the country. Freedom is in complete awakening, in full self-expression. God has given the Mahatma the voice that can call, for in him there is the truth. Why should this not be a long-awaited opportunity? So he's saying, why doesn't Gandhi do these? And then he says, but Gandhi's call came to one narrow field alone. To one and all, he simply says, spin and weave. Spin and weave. So he's now just trying to demolish why this spinning and weaving would not really pass muster by Tagore. And so then he says this very famous Tagore quote, the charkha in its proper place can do no harm, but will rather do much good. But where, by reasoned failure to acknowledge the differences in man's temperament, it is in the wrong place, their thread can only be spun at the cost of a great deal of the mind itself. Mind is no less valuable than cotton thread. So Tagore is extremely clear that we cannot let these raw emotions, these temporary goals, ideals, obstruct us on the path of this freedom of the mind. And then he comes back to this burning of cloth, and then he says, well, the question of using or refusing cloth of a particular manufacturer. As I said, the idea was to boycott British cloth because it had completely decimated the Indian textile industry. So the question of using or refusing cloth of a particular manufacturer belongs mainly to economic science. The discussion of the matter by our countrymen should have been in the language of economics. So what Tagore is saying is, and which was also very true at that time, that who were suffering from this boycott? What was happening is that, of course, this British cloth, Gandhi had objection to it, but it was much, much cheaper than this so-called indigenous textile. So if you were a poor person and you used British cloth just because it was cheap, now you're being asked by all this mob to make a bonfire out of it. Who is being the sufferer? Okay, so we have completely kind of decoupled ourselves from the economics of it. That was what was Tagore's major objection. And so he says, we take the course of confirming ourselves in it by relying on the magical formula that foreign cloth is impure, thus economics is bundled out, and a fictitious moral dictum dragged into place. So, very, very powerful and very direct. And then he says, as clearly as possible, the command, excuse me, the command to burn our foreign clothes has been laid on us. I, for one, am unable to obey it. I am against this terrible habit of blindly obeying orders, and I feel that the clothes to be burnt are not mine, but belong to those who most sorely need them. So, this is Tagore's criticism. And then we come to this boycott of schools. Tagore says, well, okay, Gandhiji, you have said to boycott schools, but at that time there was no alternative education system to impart better education. So the existing British-sponsored education was undoubtedly abominably poor, and Tagore was its severest critic, but then he tells Mahatma Gandhi, our students are bringing their offering of sacrifice to what? Not to a fuller education, but to non-education. And this kind of program could not be sustained for long. So you see, it's very clear. And then we come to what is Gandhi's response. And Gandhi's response is very direct. Gandhi says that let's talk of boycotting in schools, government schools and colleges. The training that was being given in those schools, what did it do well, it rendered our students helpless and godless. So if that is the kind of education that they were getting, what matters if they don't get it? What matters the least? Then he comes back to cloth. He says, it was our love of foreign cloth that ousted the wheel from its position of dignity. Therefore, I consider it a sin to wear foreign cloth. I must confess that I do not draw a sharp or any distinction between economics and ethics. So, if ethics dictates that I boycott foreign cloth, economics should not come into that calculation at all. That is Gandhi's view. Okay? And so then Gandhi, in a remarkable turn, he says something which again infuriates Tagore. So he says, I do indeed ask the poet and the sage to spin the wheel as a sacrament. And this is where the but is. He says, when there is war, the poet lays down the lyre, the lawyer his law reports, the schoolboy his books. So it's very clear. It's war, basically. War against this this foreign government, foreign control. And again, Tagore comes back, and he does not like this. So Tagore was unwilling to suspend the poetic life to depart from the poet's religion. So that is a very famous article by Tagore, The Religion of a Poet, and there he articulates very well that for a poet, nothing else matters but the articulation of what is in his mind. So to say that now it is war and so the poet should lay down his lyre, Tagore completely disagrees with it. So he says, to demand otherwise is to destroy the swadharma of all creative minds, and that is self-defeating as a means, however noble the ends. Hence, Tagore's plea to Gandhi was that at no time should the poet lay down his lyre or the scholar his books for the sake of Swaraj. And he says the foundation of Swaraj is in the mind. It's not really a geographical place or a particular form of government. He says the foundation of Swaraj is in the mind with its diverse powers, and its confidence in those powers goes on all the time, creating Swaraj for oneself. Okay. So then what does Gandhi say? Gandhi says that Tagore didn't really read me or didn't really understand me. He says all he knows about my movement is what he's picked up from table talk. So as I said, it's kind of jalpa. It's not really what. And poets are given to exaggeration. Poets are given to poetic license. Gurudev also does that. And so Gandhi says, well, Gurudev implied that I want everybody to spin all the time, but that's not the point. I just said half an hour every day. So that is just a very small sacrifice one can make. So Gandhi, that's how he answers. And then he says, well, I didn't just say charkha alone. Charkha is amidst a broad set of activities which promote all these things, some of which Tagore is very favorable to and very supportive of. And Tagore agrees with that part, okay? So I think there are some more things which one can talk about, but I think I'll move on because we also have to talk of time. Then the question is vernacular. So Gandhi, as I said, he was very respectful of Tagore, very deferential to Tagore. Every major activity Gandhi would undertake, he would write to Tagore saying, Gurudev, do I have your support? Gurudev, do you agree with this? So this is Gandhi's questions to Tagore about Hindi, okay, Hindi or vernacular. And he says, well, is not Hindi or Urdu the only possible national language for interprovincial intercourse? Is it not desirable to give highest teachings through the vernaculars? Should not Hindi be made a compulsory language in all post-primary schools? And what is Tagore's answer? Tagore's answer is yes and no. He says, yes, of course, Hindi is the only possible language. But, he points out, it is a foreign language for some Indians. And Tagore, as you can see from his earlier debates, he doesn't like imposition. Imposition is something very anathemical. So he says it cannot be imposed. And here I'm reminded when I was very, maybe 5-6-year-old kid, my mother recounted that, I don't remember, but she remembers. We were in a bus in Madras. At that time it used to be called Madras, today it's called Chennai. This is late 1960s. So we were traveling in a bus, and some people, they stopped the bus, asked us all to get down, and they set fire to the bus. And this was this famous, what is known as the anti-Hindi agitation. Very destructive not just to life and property, but also to the idea of India. So, and there, the Dravidians, as we call them, their main argument was, why would you impose Hindi on us? Okay, so imposition, Tagore could not agree. And then he says, well, Hindi will have to remain optional until a new generation of politicians, and he was talking, of course, of the Congress at that time. So, unfortunately, we still haven't reached that today. This was discussion 100 years ago, but today, even today, we do not have a new generation or the present generation all across India who are very fluent in Hindi or can have this kind of an interest. Okay. Then we come to the other major piece of debate, and this was regarding an earthquake. So what happened was in 1934, there was a massive earthquake in Bihar and tremendous destruction, and Gandhi at once sent Rajendra Prasad, who was a very staunch follower of Gandhi, to do relief efforts there and gave him Gandhi the reports. And Gandhi was at that time in Tamil Nadu, and he then said in a statement, as you can read, there is a divine purpose that works for the good of humanity. I believe this earthquake is a divine chastisement sent by God for our sins. And the sin was actually based on Gandhi's at that time movement of untouchability or Harijans. Okay, so Gandhi was working to bring them into the Hindu society, and he was meeting fierce resistance. So that's what he said. This earthquake is a divine chastisement. And when Tagore heard it, he was extremely furious. And so his response, as you can read, I will just highlight the basic points. Blindly, the Mahatma Gandhi blindly following their own social custom of untouchability, of having brought down God's vengeance upon certain parts of Bihar, and it is unscientific. Of course, as we understand science today, we can't really understand what Gandhi had in mind, actually. And then Tagore says, I am compelled to utter a truism in asserting that physical catastrophes have their inevitable and exclusive origin in certain combination of physical facts. Okay, so very clear disagreement. What does Gandhi, and Tagore also goes on to say something that you, I'm sure, will agree, that if you make this argument that this is divine chastisement, then it would better suit the psychology of Gandhi's opponents. And indeed they said that. They said that Gandhi's efforts to bring in these untouchables to Hindu society is the reason for which we have this divine chastisement. Okay, so Tagore is very clear. And he's very hurt, he's dismayed, he's exasperated. So now let's see what Gandhi says. Gandhi's argument is very simple, actually. It cuts through all this, and he says, I have long believed that physical phenomena produce results, both physical and spiritual. And I also hold the converse to be true. So if that's the case, we are mere mortals. How would we know the laws of God? And so, if I believe, as Gandhi did, that not even a leaf moves but by the will of the divine, then how are we to start asking questions as to, well, what is this divine chastisement? So I instinctively, look at the words, I instinctively felt that the earthquake was a visitation for the sin of untouchability. Why punishment for it? And people, of course, started asking me all kinds of questions. Why punishment now? Why punishment here? And so Gandhi says, well, who am I to answer that? I'm not God. So why are you asking me these questions? Okay. So very, very straightforward answer. But of course, it's not. I'm just kind of encapsulating or summarizing. So it did go on, but we will move on. I just wanted, as I said in the beginning, they differed vehemently, but they had tremendous mutual respect, okay? And again, people ask them, reporters ask Gandhi, and they ask Tagore, well, your differences with this person, what about it? And they both said, well, they make us, they have enriched that friendship, they have deepened this friendship, because unless you can have a frank discussion, what good is this kind of friendship or respect, okay? So, Tagore, he had this Shantiniketan Vishwa Bharati, so he nominates Gandhi to be a life trustee, and then, again, very famous quote of Tagore, it is in the fitness of things that Mahatma Gandhi, frail in body and devoid of military resources, should call up the immense power of the meek that has been lying waiting in the hearts of the destitute and insult the humanity of India. And then perhaps this is the quote that I like the best of Tagore about Gandhi. He says, great as he is as a politician, as an organizer, as a leader of men, and as a moral reformer, he is greater than all of these as a man, because none of these aspects and activities limits his humanity. So, just from these quotes, you can see how tremendous respect Tagore had for Gandhi. But I think this respect is best displayed by an incident. So Gandhi, as you know, he undertook many of these fasts for a variety of reasons. This fast was actually because a decision was made that there would be elections with separate electorates, and Gandhi at that time, he was in Pune, and he decided to take this fast unto death. Fast unto death means I will not have any solid or nutritious liquid food until this promulgation is revoked. So, of course, people are very concerned. Tagore, when he heard this news, he was A, not physically very well, B, he had just learned that his grandson had died in Germany. So, emotionally, physically, very weak. But when he heard that Gandhiji decided to go on this fast unto death, he took a train from, these are opposite parts of India, Bengal and Pune, opposite parts. So he took a train, went to Gandhiji's ashram. And luckily, when Tagore reached, by that time the problem was sorted out. Gandhi had decided to break his fast. So Tagore goes, Gandhi is given, and whenever Gandhi would break his fast, he would be given a glass of orange juice. So incidentally, Indira Priyadarshini Nehru, later on became Indira Gandhi, she was the one who gave him this orange juice. Gandhi took it, and then that was a Monday. On Mondays, Gandhi had what is known as Maunvrat. He would not speak. So he gave a piece of paper to Mahadev Desai, again, a remarkable personality. If someday we get a chance to talk about him, people call him Gandhi's secretary, but he was much, much more than that. So Gandhi gives Mahadev a piece of paper. Mahadev brings it to Tagore, and Gandhi wanted Tagore to sing a very famous composition of Tagore. And Tagore immediately, he sings that song. It's a very famous song, Jibon Jokon Shukaye Jai. And I'll just sing for you the first part of it. Jibono jakhono shukaye jay, koruna dharaye sho, shokolo madhuri lokaye jay, gito shudharashe esho. It's a long song, but I think this song expresses his respect more than anything else. Okay. Then, when this is late 1930s, Tagore's Shantiniketan has tremendous problem with funds. He tells Gandhiji, Gandhi, I know of no one else but you who can help. And Gandhiji immediately helps. Immediately means he first says, okay, don't worry, I'll do my best. And then he gathers 60,000 rupees. At that time, it was a big amount. Gandhi didn't mention it was from G.D. Birla, Ghanshyamdas Birla, very famous industrialist. Gandhi doesn't mention, but gives this money to Tagore. And then what does, because we're getting to then, what does Gandhi say on Tagore? Again, I will not read the entire thing, but I will just read what he said when he heard of Tagore's death in 1941. In the death of Rabindranath Tagore, we have not only lost the greatest poet of the age, but an ardent nationalist who was also a humanitarian. There was hardly any public activity on which he has not left the impress of his powerful personality. He has left a legacy to the whole nation, indeed to the world. May the noble soul rest in peace. So, and when we read about these debates, when we read about them, what is most enlightening are their letters. So I've just given you a picture. This is a letter that Gandhiji writes, and you can't read it first of all because it's in Gandhi's sprawling handwriting. But he is writing this letter at 3 o'clock in the morning. Okay, 3 o'clock in the morning. Why? Because that day at 12 noon he would undertake a fast. And so he's writing to Tagore saying, please bless this if you agree. And this is where their honesty comes in. He says, if you don't agree, just tell me, that's perfectly fine. So this is one of those letters, and again, this is a letter that Tagore wrote. Dear Mahatma Ji, and this is Tagore, he had an operation for which he needed to be under anesthesia, so when he comes out of anesthesia, he writes that the first thing that welcomed me to this world of life after the period of stupor I passed through was your message of affectionate anxiety. So these letters, they kind of show how much they loved and respected each other. So then the question comes, this is my penultimate slide. How did this help? I mean, what did one learn from the other? And I think what Gandhi learned from this set of debates is that the highest place one has to give is to one's own conscience. Then patience is needed. I mean, we have to keep in mind, Gandhiji, sometime in the 1920s, he said, I will give you Swaraj in 10 years. Okay, so Gandhiji was not impatient, but he was very ambitious. And Gandhiji learned from Tagore that patience is very much needed. And Gandhi himself says, I learned from Gurudev how not to lose sight of post-independence India. What will happen after India becomes politically independent? What did Tagore learn? Tagore learned that you have to practice what you preach. Just to give you an example, in Shantiniketan, at that time, inter-caste dining was not prevalent. So you did have communal meals, but one group of people here, one group of people of another caste there. Gandhi goes to Shantiniketan and he says, Gurudev, what is this? And that admonition by Gandhi kind of made Tagore take this instantaneous decision that from now on, no more this caste segregated dining. Okay. Then something else which Tagore started, but for some reason it didn't continue, and that is in those days there was not a sanitary system as we understand today. So there had to be some people who were employed who would take all this, what they call night soil, and take it out, okay? So in Gandhi's ashrams, in Phoenix, in Tolstoy, in Sabarmati, there was no particular person employed. Ashramites had to do it. In Shantiniketan, no. So Gandhi again points this out. Gurudev, what is this? So Gurudev starts implementing it, but after some time, for whatever reason, I don't know. And lastly, just again, because we are so short of time, Tagore says in Gandhiji's 70th birthday that Gandhi's realm of activity in practical politics was one of the makers of history. So you can preach something, but when you practice with so many people, there are certain things that Tagore learned. Okay. And just to set it all, there was an overarching Hindu framework for the debates. And I'm saying this because some scholars have said, well, the differences were because Tagore believed in the Upanishads and Gandhi believed in Bhagavad Gita. And that is absolutely not tenable. Because there is no difference as such between the teachings of Upanishads and Bhagavad Gita. Okay, so that doesn't hold. But the way one can understand their differences within the Hindu framework is, and this is something they themselves said, although not so many words. When Gandhi was asked, what is your life's philosophy? Give it in as few words as possible. Gandhi said, I will give it in 3 words. Okay, what are the 3 words? Renounce and rejoice. Okay. And one can, of course, understand it very easily that if you can, this ascetic spirit, if it can renounce everything, then of course you will get this unlimited joy. What did Tagore say? Rejoice and renounce. Just the opposite. Rejoice, because for Tagore, when we say something that we say in the Hindu framework, Satchidananda, that means the third part is the Ananda part, the joy of kind of when you reach enlightenment, that joy, for Tagore, that was the crux of everything. So for Tagore, it was, you can say, the opposite in the sense that if you can find joy in everything, then you will automatically renounce, you will not hold on to things. So with this, I thank you so much for all your patience. And we do have some time, about, I would say, 8-9 minutes for Q&A. I'll be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Regarding the 3 forms of debate.